Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by Earth Mama's Apothecary and littleshaman.org. That's me, Little Shaman. Today I wanted to talk to you about whether narcissistic people know the difference between right and wrong. This is something there seems to be some confusion about, so I wanted to address that on the show today. There's a lot of sympathy and support for people with mental illness, and rightfully so. Mental illness can be devastating. Technically speaking, pathologically narcissistic people are mentally ill. They have distorted thinking, impaired perception, and many emotional problems, along with whatever other comorbid or co-occurring issues they might have, such as substance abuse, depression, and anxiety or eating disorders. There is often debate about whether someone is responsible for their actions or not when they have a mental illness or a disorder. The point of contention is usually whether this person understands the difference between right and wrong and whether or not they're capable of controlling their behavior. This is a summary of how responsibility is determined legally in a court of law. Does someone understand that what they did was wrong, and were they able to control their behavior? In the case of the majority of pathologically narcissistic people, the answer to these questions is yes. Yes, they understand what they've done is generally considered wrong. They don't care. Yes, they can control their behavior. They have chosen not to do so. They will go as far as they feel they can get away with. For example, in a domestic violence situation, it doesn't usually start out with black eyes and broken bones. It starts out with a push or with throwing something at the victim. It starts out with degrading them, with calling them names, things like that. The consequences of this behavior are as yet unknown, so the abuser tests the water to see what will happen. When the victim doesn't end the relationship or impose any real consequences, the abuser becomes bolder and more comfortable with becoming violent. They will just keep pushing and pushing and pushing until either they are hit with serious consequences or the abuser themselves decides it's gone far enough. This could be very far indeed, up to and including the death of the victim. As with any abuse situation, narcissists blame the victim. They say they were provoked, that they were baited, that they were abused themselves. It's a common defense for a narcissistic abuser to imply or even flat out say that they cannot control themselves. And this is not just for physical abuse, it's all types of abuse. This is a way of denying responsibility for their actions by blaming the victim or blaming circumstances or basically anything other than themselves. For example, an abuser that is forced to confront their own abusive behavior may defend their actions by saying they were mad about something someone else did or said, and then they took it out on the victim because they, quote, couldn't help it. Such as a situation where someone who's angry about something that happened at work takes it out on their spouse or their children. It's funny because it seems like they controlled themselves just fine with the person they claim to actually be upset with. They waited until they got to their victim to suddenly become unable to control themselves. It's a crock. It happens because the consequences of attacking the other person are unknown, but they know there will be no consequences for attacking the victim. It's safer to take their anger out on the victim. There's no risk involved. This is how we know that the majority of pathologically narcissistic people can control their behavior, because they do. If they feel they need to control their behavior, they can do it quite well. For instance, if the police are there, or if they're in court, or if there are people around who the narcissist doesn't want to witness their behavior, that behavior will not occur. Except in cases of very severe stress or upset. The abusive behavior of narcissists will generally only happen when they feel comfortable in the idea that they will not be challenged for it or face consequences. There may be some subtle attempts at covert abuse, like maybe trying to embarrass somebody or attempts at manipulation in front of other people, but generally you don't see the blatant abuse that narcissists are known for if they feel they're in a position where they can't get away with it. This is why some people attempt to record the narcissist without their knowledge, because they know they're not going to act that way in front of other people. But does the narcissist know that their behavior is wrong? Well, obviously, if they're trying to hide something, they know somebody's going to think something's wrong with it. Otherwise, why would they bother to hide it? If it's not wrong, and everyone will clearly agree with you that it's not wrong, why are you hiding what you're doing? But what about in the broader sense? Do pathologically narcissistic people understand the difference between right and wrong in the broader sense? Yes, they do. Narcissistic people, in general, are not psychotic. They understand the difference between right and wrong. They just don't think the same rules apply to them. For example, yes, it's wrong to steal. It is not wrong for the narcissist to steal, and you should stop overreacting, okay? Because they really needed that thing that they stole, whatever it was. Yes, okay, it's wrong to hit your spouse. It is not wrong for the narcissist to hit their spouse because it's only wrong to hit a normal spouse, a good spouse that is loving and supportive and perfect, like all the other spouses on earth besides you. It's not wrong to hit an evil, manipulative spouse that's trying to ruin your life and provoke you. Anyone would agree with that. Yes, it's wrong to abuse your children. It's not wrong for the narcissist to abuse their children because what they are doing is not abuse. Abuse is hurting a child that doesn't deserve it. An evil, hateful, disgusting, despicable child like you were was not being abused because you deserved it. Anybody would agree with that. Of course, if they really believed that anyone would agree with that, they wouldn't be so desperate to make sure nobody finds out about it. The truth is, they know their behavior is wrong, and they understand the concept of right and wrong very well. Many of them consider themselves an authority on what's right, what's wrong, what's fair, what's unfair. They can punish other people for a wrongdoing all day long, and they can go on for days, for years, about the many ways they've been wronged in their life. They understand just fine. They just don't think any of it applies to them because they're pretending to be special. It isn't the rules that pathologically narcissistic people don't understand. It's their own self-importance and their overblown fictional view of their place in the world that's the problem. There's always an excuse for them. There's always a justification or a mitigation. There's always a defense and a reason why what they've done is not really wrong. Pretending they can do no wrong is not the same as not knowing what wrong is. Don't let that confuse you. These are two totally different things. Just because someone doesn't seem to believe they personally did anything wrong doesn't mean they don't know the difference between right and wrong at all. It means they don't believe they did anything wrong, and that's all it means. A lot of people seem to be confused on that fact. Just because they don't think they did anything wrong doesn't mean they don't understand right and wrong. It means they believe they are entitled and justified to do those things. That's what it means. Mental illness can be very serious. It can be terrible and tragic, but it is not an excuse to abuse other people. Not when someone understands the difference between right and wrong. It's just not, and that's all there is to it. The only possible exception to this would be if someone is experiencing actual psychosis and literally cannot tell reality from fantasy. Narcissists live in denial and their perception is distorted, but they are not psychotic. They know what they're doing. They just don't care. I hope this clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions, so please keep those coming. I take appointments online and over the phone, so if you're interested in speaking with me one-on-one, you can visit littleshaman.org and click the Book an Appointment tab to go ahead and do that. Or you can use the link that's available in the information section of this video. You've been listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by littleshaman.org. That's me, Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you and have a wonderful day.